I was folding laundry when the silence hit me again. Not the peaceful kind. The hollow, aching kind. The kind that reminded me just how long it had been since I felt seen. 8 years of marriage, and lately, my husband had become a ghost in the same house. He left early, came home late, always with his eyes on his phone or laptop. Even on weekends, it was business calls, half-hearted nods, and distracted ahas. He had noticed I changed my hair 3 weeks ago, or that I started skipping meals. I wasn't even sure he'd notice if I left. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when he used to pull me close just because he could, when he touched my waist in the kitchen and whispered things that made me blush. Now he walks past me like I'm part of the furniture. I tried bringing it up once, asking him if something was wrong, if maybe we were drifting. He said he was just tired. Always tired. Tired of work, tired of talking, tired of expectations. He said he loved me, then rolled over and went to sleep. The front door had been sticking for months. I asked him to fix it. He kept saying he would. Never did. Eventually, I stopped asking. But every time I wrestled with the door, I felt it, the metaphor. How we'd let little things go until they became bigger than they should be. I told myself it wasn't worth a fight. But the truth? It wasn't about the door. It was about being ignored. Last Tuesday, I finally called someone. Found a local handyman with good reviews. Simple enough. Fix the door, that's it. I scheduled him for Friday afternoon, when I knew I'd be home alone. Not for any reason other than convenience, or so I told myself. I didn't even think about what I'd wear. But that morning, I shaved my legs. I moisturized. I put on perfume. Not the strong kind. Just enough to feel, not invisible. I told myself it was silly. Just self-care. Just something to break the routine. I waited. Not anxiously, but aware. Every car outside made me glance at the window. Every minute felt longer than it should. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart jumped. I walked over, paused to smooth my shirt and open it. He stood there, a stranger with a toolbox and a calm face. Nothing romantic. Nothing dramatic. Just a man here to do his job. But the way he looked at me, just for a second, made me forget how numb I'd been. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It was recognition. Like someone finally saw me again. And I knew then, without understanding why, that something was going to shift. Maybe not today. Maybe not even with him. But something inside me had already started moving. He introduced himself with a quiet voice, just a first name, then asked about the door. I pointed it out, stepping aside. He walked in, inspecting the frame with quiet focus. No small talk, no pushiness. Just calm, competent energy. It was strange how quickly the air shifted. I found myself watching him more than I should have. The way he moved, the way his hands knew exactly what to do. There was nothing loud about him, but he filled the space in a way that didn't feel heavy. I offered water. He said thank you like he meant it. That alone caught me off guard. My husband hadn't said thank you in weeks. Maybe months. We talked briefly about the weather, how old homes settle, how doors like mine warp over time. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't charged. But it was real. Present. He looked at me when he spoke, like what I said mattered, even if it was something small. That, more than anything, made me want to keep talking. He asked if I'd had this door problem long. I said yes, and that I'd asked my husband to fix it, but it never happened. I laughed after I said it, trying to make it light. He didn't laugh. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than I said. That small gesture hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. The kind that says, yeah, I've seen that happen. Minutes passed. He worked steadily, occasionally asking me to hold something or press here, tighten that. Our hands brushed once. It was brief. Accidental. But I felt it more than I should have. Not in a dramatic way, no sparks flying. Just a reminder that I had nerves. Skin. That I wasn't just going through the motions. I felt seen, not stared at. That difference meant everything. He made a comment about how the frame had been improperly installed. I nodded, but my mind was somewhere else. On the way he smelled like sawdust and laundry detergent, on how his forearms flexed when he leaned in. I caught myself staring and looked away. He didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't let on. That somehow made it worse. Or better. I couldn't tell. At one point he asked what I did. I hesitated before answering. Not because it was a secret, but because no one had asked me that in so long. I told him I work part-time from home, mostly alone. He nodded again, not filling the silence, just letting it settle. He was good at that, leaving space without making it awkward. He never crossed a line, never said anything out of place. But I could feel something threading itself through the air, a slow awareness building between us. I kept reminding myself that he was just here for a job, that he'd leave soon, and this moment would pass. But part of me hoped it wouldn't. Part of me didn't want the door fixed at all. Rain started without warning. He looked up, said it wouldn't take long to pass. I said he could wait inside if he wanted. He nodded once, then sat near the door, wiping his hands on a cloth from his toolbox. I offered coffee. He accepted. I made 2 cups in silence, unsure why my hands were slightly shaking. When I handed him the mug, our fingers touched again, and this time neither of us moved away too quickly. The conversation shifted. He asked if I was happy here. I should have lied. Instead, I asked if anyone really was. He didn't respond right away. Just looked at the wall like he was searching for an honest answer. Then he said sometimes people get used to being lonely and forget it's not normal. I stared at him, not sure what to say, because that was exactly it. I hadn't heard it phrased that way before. But it fit. We sat in that strange silence, the kind that isn't uncomfortable but heavy with meaning. I noticed how close we were now, not physically, but emotionally. The kind of closeness that sneaks up before you realize you've let someone in. I wanted to stop it. I didn't. I asked him if he had someone. He said not anymore. Then he asked me the same question. I said I did, but it hadn't felt like it in a long time. I don't know who leaned in first. I just remember it felt inevitable. His lips brushed mine like a question. I answered. It wasn't desperate or rushed. It was slow, cautious, like we were both afraid of waking up. But it kept going, and soon the caution melted into something deeper, something neither of us tried to stop. We didn't talk. Didn't justify. Our bodies filled the space our words couldn't. After, we didn't look at each other for a moment. The rain had stopped. I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock, louder than it had ever sounded before. He stood slowly, buttoned his shirt, and I wrapped my arms around myself, not out of cold, but to hold something in. He said nothing as he packed up his tools. I opened the door for him. He paused, like he wanted to say something but didn't. I nodded once. He walked out. I closed the door behind him with a hand that barely felt real. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. Just hollow. I sat on the floor, trying to understand what I'd just done. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about lust. It was about feeling alive, if only for a moment. I told myself it was a mistake. I told myself it wouldn't happen again. But what scared me more was that I didn't regret it, not fully. I regretted needing it. The house felt quieter than usual after he left. Not physically, but in the way something shifts when a secret settles into the air. My husband came home late like always. He didn't notice anything. Not the rearranged mugs. Not the coffee cup still in the sink. Not the fact that I couldn't meet his eyes. He kissed my cheek absently and asked what I wanted for dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. He didn't ask why. Lying next to him in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling and listened to his breathing. Steady, shallow, familiar. He turned away from me in his sleep, like he always did. And I stared at the back of his head, wondering if he had any idea that his wife had broken something irreparable that afternoon. I wondered if he'd care, or if this too would pass by unnoticed. In the days that followed, nothing changed. He was still busy, still distracted, still blind to the cracks growing wider between us. I tried to act normal, but inside I was splintering. I replayed every moment in my head, the silence, the touch, the choice. I didn't fantasize. I didn't daydream. I analyzed over and over, trying to decide if it was desperation or something darker. I didn't reach out to the handyman. He didn't call. We both understood what it was. A moment that didn't belong to either of us. A pause in someone else's story. I told myself that made it cleaner, easier. But the guilt didn't go away. It just changed shape. Some days it felt like a bruise. Other days it felt like a crack beneath the surface, threatening to split everything open. I thought about telling my husband, not to hurt him, but to stop lying. But every time I imagined his reaction, confusion, anger, or worse, indifference, I swallowed the words. I didn't want to see that look on his face. I didn't want to confirm that he'd already lost me and hadn't noticed, or that I'd walked away emotionally long before I ever crossed that physical line. There was no plan, no dramatic ending, just days that kept coming one after the other, with a weight I couldn't shake. I cleaned more. I organized drawers. I scrolled endlessly on my phone just to drown out the noise in my head. I stared at the door more than I should have. It worked perfectly now. No creaks, no resistance. But every time I opened it, something inside me flinched. The hardest part wasn't the guilt. It was realizing how easy it had been, how natural it felt to drift toward someone who noticed me. I hadn't been looking for anything. I just stopped resisting the need to be seen. I stayed in my marriage, at least for now. But something shifted that day that I can't unfeel. The door was fixed, but something else had broken. And I was the only one who heard it crack.